Hi everyone and welcome back. Today I have a very special topic for you. It has been on my mind for a long time now to talk to you about this. It's about those situations where people from church or people who think themselves to be spiritual encounter our problems with kind of preordained sentences like, oh, don't worry, God will take care of it, or just pray more, or my favorite, it was the will of God. Insert very spiritual face and the appropriate drop in tone. Okay, so just before I start, if you don't know me, my name is Julia Hadmeyer. I am a theologian and a psychologist, and on A Voice Calling Out, I just create content about stuff that is impacting us on a mental, spiritual or psychological level, and just try to kind of make a difference between what are the things that are actually helpful for our mental health and for our spiritual health, and what are the things that that should be better if we just don't do anymore. As always, if you guys have been around for some time, you know I always try to put a lot of research and a lot of books and a lot of references in the description box. Make sure that you check that out for each and every video. And if you like this kind of content, please subscribe to my channel, hit that notification bell so for each video that I'm uploading you will be the first one to receive a notification, and give me a thumbs up if you like my videos. Okay, so here's the thing. If there is such a thing as spiritual truths, like, you know, a true thing that is spiritually able to describe reality, then these truths are supposed to really comfort us in our deepest valleys, in our hugest sorrows, in our pain, in our grief, in everything that is difficult in this life. So this is kind of the basis of where I'm coming from. If you're listening to me and you think, oh, there's no such thing as a spiritual truth, or there's no such thing as truth, then this video is not for you. But if you do think that there might be such a thing as a spiritual reality, then this video is for you, and keep listening if you want to learn more about it. Now here's my problem. My problem is with so-called spiritual half-truths or superficial spiritual sounding sentences that people use in a form that they are supposed to comfort and fulfill all those things that I think spiritual truths should be fulfilling, but in the end all they do is cause really more pain. I actually know the exact same date that I started to hate the expression "it was God's will." 29th of September 1995. I was 5.5 years old, and it was the day after my dad has passed. People came to our house to comfort us. It's kind of what you do in Romania before you have a funeral. And I swear I don't remember anybody saying anything else than, "Oh honey, it was God's will," or "Oh, it was God's will." As a 5.5-year-old, I did not really understand what was happening. But what I was told is that there is a God, and he wanted my dad to die. I actually don't blame them at all, because my understanding of the people, generally those who do this, is that there's actually no real bad intent behind these kinds of comforting sentences. I think that they generally did not know any better. I think that all of us who resort to these easy, comforting sounding sentences are doing that because we don't know any better. Because if we are really honest with ourselves, we know that in situations like that, you don't know what to say. You are speechless, but you want to comfort, so that's what comes out. And I also think that this wasn't really like an informed theological thinking of, God's will looks like that and that and that. And I was just talking to God this morning, and this is what he said to me about your dad. It was my will. No, it's not that. It's a passed down tradition. It's not even a tradition. It's just a passed down habit that people say and repeat. And here's where I think the problem lies. People say and repeat because these kind of sentences help them bypass the whole going through the suffering part. And that is why these kinds of sentences are poison. Because they poison the people who listen. They poison me. They didn't want to poison me, but they poisoned me with these kinds of spiritual half-truths, because years and years later, when I actually started having my first experiences with God, with the real God, I just came into an existential crisis about how to reconcile the idea that I'm absolutely sure that God exists, and I have this notion that he will take away each and every person that I love. So how do I do this? And I had to fight to gain a confidence in God. I had to fight to be able to open myself up to God and be vulnerable towards God. By the way, I'm working on a lot of vulnerability stuff. You can find this video in my you can find this video about vulnerability if you click right here or in the description. A lot of the things that I wrote that I put in those videos were actually taken from experiences that I have done as steps towards opening up myself to God. So how I had to learn through going through like the deepest pains that I imagined having, that I can actually trust this God, even though I was told that it was his will that my God died and my dad died. So that is why these things are so poisoning, because whenever we have someone going through something that is already so difficult, so complicated, so raw, like grief, or like emotional or mental illnesses, or financial troubles, or just whatever kind of things that you can imagine going through, that it is hard. It's never simple. It's always complicated, and it's always complex, and it always has like this range of emotions that you go through daily, that one simple sentence has no way to resonate with that whole experience. So the reason why these kinds of half-truths are poison is because they are giving the idea that there is a simple solution. They are dangling the idea of help, and at the same time they are obstructing the real help that is in the real truth. Because if there is such a thing as God, if there is such a thing as a spiritual reality, then all of those things, insofar as they are true, and insofar that we really understand them in their full complexity, as much as we can understand them in their full complexity as humans, then they would be a real comfort for people who are going through complex emotional, psychological, spiritual situations. But only insofar we really take the work in our own lives to go through our own spiritual processes and through our own pain, to really understand how those maybe simple sounding sentences relate to a complex situation. Because it is true that God is good and he will provide, but the simple sounding sentence can cover such a whole range of complex situations in which God actually does provide. Mind you, I studied a lot of theology, and I've read a lot of books, and I'm reading the Bible every day, and I don't know what the will of God is, and I don't know how his will was implicated in my dad's so early passing. But in my whole grief process, because I allowed myself to feel the grief, and because I allowed God to come into my grief, I could understand a little bit of his goodwill toward me. So obviously I won't ever know what was God's will about my dad and all that. But I can see that through all highs and lows and through the whole complexity of my life. Even as today bad things still happen in my life, I can see those truths really applying. And I can also see that those around me who really understand that these truths are complex truths don't ever just say as a first response to my first pain, oh, God will provide. Because they know that they would be dismissive if they do that. So half-truths are poison for the ones who listen, but half-truths are also poison to the souls of the people who speak them. Because what happens in you when you are speaking these kinds of half-truths is you have a real, raw, aching, hard situation in your face and you choose to ignore it. And you choose to let yourself be part of it. You choose to not let yourself be part of it. You choose to just avoid a real life situation and kind of live in this imagined life, in this maybe even a little bit protected life where everything is simple. And you know, what does that say about you? And what does that say about me when I'm doing that? It says that I'm too afraid to face reality. And that is not health, that is poison. Not being able to take a part in a real situation. I'm not saying you have to always take a part in the suffering of someone else, but you can acknowledge that they are suffering and their suffering is complex, and nothing that you could ever say in one simple sentence will solve their problem. And hey, I'm not saying you shouldn't pray if you have a mental illness. I am pretty sure that my mental problems have been healed partly through prayer. But what I am advocating for is this. Let's be the kind of believers who reflect on what our faith really means to us and how it would apply to the people around us. Let's be the kind of people who take our faith and our faith sentences into our own messy, complicated, and complex realities, be that suffering or huge joy, and let those truths or let those sentences really become truths through our experiences. And then let's be so considerate towards each other that we are able to acknowledge the complexity of the other person's suffering or grief or whatever they are going through. And yes, let's consider using the truth to comfort each other, because that's why truth is there. But at the same time, let's take 3 steps back to ask ourselves, what would God do in these kinds of situations? Would he just go there and say everyone, oh, you just have to pray more. Oh, don't worry, I have it under control. Or would he just really sit there and listen and give the biggest gift of all, their heart, his heart open to receive all of those things? I think if more of us would have the courage to do this, our churches would be a wonderful place to be for all of us Christians and all of us non-Christians. So let's not dismiss life in its complexity. Let's let life flow as it would, and let's invite God into the whole, full, messy, complex things of life. Take care, you guys. See you next time.